The Pacific Northwest forest stretched into the horizon, a dense labyrinth of towering cedars and pines. The moon hung low in the sky, casting its silvery light over the landscape. Shadows moved across the underbrush, shaped by the rustling branches above. The forest teemed with life, though much of it remained hidden, observing the night with cautious eyes. From the distance came an unnatural sound, a car engine rumbling through the quiet. The headlights pierced the darkness as the vehicle slowed to a stop on a lonely dirt road. Two figures stepped out, their movements hurried and anxious. In the woman's arms was a bundle, wrapped tightly in a blanket. The faint cries of a baby broke the stillness of the night. The woman hesitated, clutching the infant close for a moment, before setting it down gently on a patch of moss beneath an ancient cedar tree. The cries grew louder as the couple returned to the car, their footsteps quick and resolute. The vehicle started, its engine fading into the distance until the forest was silent once more, save for the child's helpless wails. In the shadows, a pair of yellow eyes glowed faintly. A large wolf stepped into the clearing, its silver coat shimmering under the moonlight. It sniffed the air, ears twitching at the unfamiliar scent. The rest of the pack emerged cautiously, their noses low to the ground, circling the bundle. The alpha wolf, Fenrir, approached with deliberate steps. He lowered his head to examine the bundle, his breath stirring the edges of the blanket. After a moment, he lifted the child carefully in his jaws, the soft material protecting the baby. Without hesitation, the pack turned and disappeared into the forest, their movements swift and silent. The cries faded into the distance, replaced by the sound of rustling leaves and the haunting howls of the pack as they carried the child deeper into the wilderness. The child grew in the forest, embraced by the wolves who had become her family. From the moment she was brought into the den, the pack treated her with a mixture of caution and curiosity. At first, her presence was a disruption, her cries startling the quiet rhythms of their lives. But as the days turned to weeks, she adapted to their ways, her cries softening as she grew accustomed to the wild. She crawled on all fours before she could walk, her movements mimicking the wolves around her. Her tiny hands pressed against the cool earth, her fingers tracing the patterns of leaves and stones. The den, a hidden network of tunnels and shaded spaces, became her sanctuary. It was here that she learned to survive, to interpret the unspoken language of the pack. The alpha wolf, Fenrir, watched her closely, his golden eyes filled with a wisdom beyond comprehension. Under his silent guidance, she began to explore the forest with the pack. She learned to move through the underbrush without a sound, her small body fitting into spaces even the youngest wolves could not reach. She observed the subtle cues the wolves used to communicate, a flick of the tail, a tilt of the head, the soft growl that signaled a warning. Life with the pack was not without challenges. The forest was a place of beauty, but also danger. Predators roamed the shadows, their presence marked by distant roars or the faint rustling of leaves. Food was scarce during harsh winters and survival demanded constant vigilance. The child, now called Luna by the pack in a way only they understood, learned to rely on her instincts, sharpening them through trial and error. Her closest companion was a young wolf named Coda, whose playful energy often matched her curiosity. Together they chased small prey through the woods, splashed in shallow streams, and explored the farthest edges of the pack's territory. Through Coda, she experienced the joy of belonging, the warmth of a bond formed without words. However, not all the wolves accepted her. Some viewed her as an outsider, a human whose presence could bring danger to the pack. Their wary glances and occasional growls reminded Luna that she was different. but Fenrir's leadership ensured her safety, his silent authority maintaining the delicate balance within the pack. Seasons passed, and Luna grew stronger. Her small frame adapted to the demands of the wild, her movements swift and fluid like those of her wolf siblings. She hunted small prey, her eyes scanning the forest floor for signs of life. She climbed trees to escape danger, her hands gripping the bark as she ascended to safety. The forest became her teacher, its lessons harsh but invaluable. Luna's days were filled with the rhythm of survival. She followed the pack on their hunts, watched the cycles of the moon, and listened to the howls that echoed through the night. Though she did not understand the world beyond the forest, she felt no longing for it. For Luna, the wilderness was not just a home, it was a part of her. As Luna grew, the forest became her teacher, shaping her instincts and sharpening her senses. Every shadow held a lesson, every sound a warning. The wolves remained her family, but the wilderness itself demanded that she prove her worth, testing her resilience in ways only the wild could. The pack moved through the forest with practiced precision, their paws silent against the moss-covered ground. Luna followed closely, her small frame weaving through underbrush and leaping over fallen logs. Her eyes, sharp and observant, scanned the surroundings for movement. The wolves taught her the importance of awareness. A misplaced step or careless noise could mean the difference between survival and peril. One afternoon, the pack stopped abruptly at the edge of a clearing. Fenrir, his silver fur glinting in the sunlight, raised his head, his nostrils flaring as he caught an unfamiliar scent. Luna crouched low, her heart pounding in her chest. She sensed the tension in the pack as their ears flattened and their muscles tensed. From the far side of the clearing, a mountain lion emerged, its tawny body moving with predatory grace. It paused, its piercing eyes locking onto the pack. Luna froze, her instincts screaming at her to run, but she stayed rooted to the spot, watching as Fenrir stepped forward. The alpha wolf let out a low growl, his posture firm and unyielding. The mountain lion hesitated, its tail flicking back and forth before retreating into the shadows. Though the danger had passed, Luna felt the weight of the encounter. The forest was not kind to the careless. Every predator, including herself, played a role in its delicate balance. She realized that her survival depended on understanding and respecting that balance. In the weeks that followed, Luna's skills were put to the test. She learned to track prey, following the faint traces left by rabbits and deer. She practiced patience, lying still for hours as she observed the habits of her quarry. When the pack hunted, she played her part, her smaller size, allowing her to navigate tight spaces and flush prey toward the waiting wolves. But the forest was more than a hunting ground. It was a living, breathing entity, both protector and challenger. During one of her explorations, Luna stumbled upon a small creek winding through the forest. The water was clear and cold, reflecting the sunlight that filtered through the canopy above. As she crouched to drink, she noticed a trail of footprints along the bank, human footprints. The sight of the footprints sent a jolt through her. They were similar to her own, yet foreign. Luna traced the path with a mix of curiosity and caution, her fingers brushing the impressions in the soft earth. The trail led her to an old cabin nestled among the trees, its weathered wood blending with the surrounding forest. The cabin appeared abandoned, its windows broken, and its door hanging ajar. Inside, Luna found remnants of human life, torn clothing, rusted tools, and faded photographs. She held one of the photographs in her hands, her eyes scanning the faces of the people captured within. They looked like her in a way the wolves did not. For the first time, Luna felt a strange connection to a world she had never known. The discovery of the cabin lingered in her mind as she returned to the pack. She did not speak of it, though the wolves seemed to sense a shift in her. Her curiosity about the humans grew, yet she remained wary. The forest had taught her to tread carefully, and she knew that understanding this new part of herself would take time. One night, as the pack rested under the stars, Luna gazed up at the moon, her thoughts tangled. The forest had shaped her, molded her into one of its own. Yet the cabin and its contents hinted at another life, a distant truth she could not ignore. The forest had tested her, and she had proven her place within its bounds. But the pull of the unknown stirred something deep within her, a question that demanded answers. The seasons changed, and the forest evolved with them. Luna, now more agile and skilled, roamed the woods with the confidence of one who belonged. Yet the discovery of the old cabin lingered in her thoughts like a faint echo, drawing her curiosity toward a world she had never known. The wolves, ever watchful, seemed to sense her growing restlessness, though they did not interfere. One morning, as the pack prowled through the mist-covered forest, a new scent reached Fenrir's nose. His body stiffened, and the rest of the pack froze in unison. Luna, crouching low among the underbrush, peered ahead. The sharp, acrid smell of smoke and metal filled the air. Humans had entered the forest. From a vantage point high in the trees, Luna saw them. A group of men, clad in heavy boots and carrying tools, moved through the woods. Their voices were loud, cutting through the quiet serenity. Behind them, machines roared as they cleared the trees, leaving jagged stumps in their wake. The humans worked methodically, their presence alien and disruptive. Luna's heart raced. She felt an odd pull toward them, a flicker of recognition. Yet she also felt a deep unease. Their movements were clumsy compared to the wolves, their actions destructive rather than harmonious. The forest seemed to recoil from them, its stillness disturbed by their intrusion. Fenrir led the pack away from the area, his instincts warning against confrontation. The wolves moved quickly, their paws silent on the forest floor. Luna followed, but her gaze lingered on the humans, questions forming in her mind. Who were they? Why did they disrupt the forest's balance? And what did their presence mean for her and the pack? The humans' intrusion grew over the following weeks. Machines rumbled deeper into the woods, carving roads where none had existed. Trees fell in great numbers, their ancient forms reduced to logs and sawdust. The wolves adapted by moving farther into the forest, but the encroachment was relentless. The once pristine wilderness became scarred, its harmony fractured. One day, as Luna roamed alone, she stumbled upon a young deer trapped in a snare. The animal thrashed desperately, its eyes wide with fear. Luna approached cautiously, her heart aching for the creature. She worked quickly to free it, using her sharp instincts to untangle the rope. The deer bolted into the trees, its gratitude silent but understood. The snare, however, told a troubling story. Humans were not just clearing the forest, they were hunting. The traps were cruel and indiscriminate, endangering not only prey, but predators alike. Luna carried the broken snare back to the pack, presenting it to Fenrir. Though the wolves could not express anger in human terms, their low growls spoke of their growing unease. The tension between the wolves and the humans came to a head when a member of the pack was injured. Coda, the playful young wolf, had been caught in a hunter's trap. Luna found him struggling, his paw bleeding and swollen. She worked quickly to free him, her hands trembling as she loosened the steel jaws of the trap. Coda limped back to the den, his pain evident in his every step. The wolves rallied around him, their howls echoing through the forest. Luna felt a surge of guilt and anger. The humans had brought danger to her family, and she could not ignore their impact any longer. Yet, she also felt a strange connection to them, a pull she could not fully explain. As she tended to Coda's wounds, Luna found herself torn between two worlds. The forest had given her a home, shaped her into who she was. But the humans stirred something deeper, an unanswered question about her own identity. She did not yet know what path lay ahead, but she understood one thing: the balance of the forest was shifting, and she would have to choose where she belonged. The forest had always been Luna's sanctuary, its rhythms and cycles as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. Yet the presence of humans had disrupted that harmony, casting shadows of doubt over the life she had built with the pack. The wolves, ever vigilant, moved cautiously through their shrinking territory, avoiding the areas scarred by human activity. Luna followed, but her thoughts often strayed to the questions that lingered in her mind, questions about the humans and her place in the world. One crisp morning, Luna ventured farther than usual, her curiosity pulling her toward the edges of the forest. The air carried the faint scent of smoke and iron, and the distant hum of machinery reached her ears. As she crept closer, she spotted a small group of humans gathered near a logging site. They were setting up camp, their tents and equipment scattered among the fallen trees. Luna watched from the shadows, her body hidden among the dense foliage. Her gaze fell on a young boy, no older than herself, sitting apart from the others. His face was streaked with dirt, and he held a wooden stick, absent-mindedly drawing patterns in the soil. He looked restless, his eyes scanning the forest as if searching for something. Luna felt a strange pang of recognition, though she could not place its source. Suddenly the boy stood and wandered toward the forest's edge, his movements hesitant but determined. The adults, busy with their work, did not notice his departure. Luna followed him silently, her footsteps light against the forest floor. She kept her distance, her instincts warning her to stay hidden. The boy ventured deeper into the woods, his expression shifting from curiosity to uncertainty. The trees grew denser, their towering forms casting long shadows across the ground. When the boy tripped over a root and fell, Luna hesitated, torn between her caution and an inexplicable urge to help. The boy sat up, clutching his scraped knee, his face contorted in pain. He looked around, his eyes wide with fear as he realized he was lost. Luna stepped forward cautiously, her movements deliberate. The boy froze when he saw her, his gaze locking onto hers. Luna held his stare, her body poised for flight should he react aggressively. To her surprise, the boy did not scream or run. Instead, his expression softened, his fear giving way to wonder. Luna took another step forward, her movements slow and unthreatening. She extended a hand, her fingers brushing against the stick he had dropped. The boy hesitated before reaching out, their hands almost touching. A sudden rustling in the underbrush shattered the moment. Both Luna and the boy turned to see a small group of wolves emerging from the shadows. Coda led the group, his injured paw still slightly limping, but his stance protective. The boy's eyes widened and he stumbled backward, his stick held defensively in front of him. Luna moved quickly, stepping between the boy and the wolves. She raised her arms, a gesture she had learned to signal calmness within the pack. Coda hesitated, his ears twitching as he read her body language. The other wolves stopped as well, their instincts tempered by their bond with Luna. The boy watched in stunned silence as Luna guided the wolves back into the forest. She turned once to look at him, her expression unreadable, before disappearing into the shadows. The boy remained frozen for a moment, his stick clutched tightly in his hands. Then, with a shaky breath, he turned and ran back toward the camp. That night, Luna returned to the den, her thoughts heavy. The encounter with the boy had stirred something deep within her, a sense of connection to the humans she had long observed from afar. Yet, it had also revealed the stark divide between her two worlds. The wolves had been her family, their ways shaping her life. But the boy's presence reminded her of the life she had never known, the life she might have had if she had not been left in the forest. Fenrir watched her closely, his golden eyes reflecting the firelight that flickered through the den. Though he could not speak, his gaze carried the weight of understanding. Luna felt a pang of guilt, knowing that her bond with the pack was being tested by the questions she could no longer ignore. Over the next few days, Luna's restlessness grew. She spent more time alone, wandering the forest and revisiting the places that held pieces of her story. She returned to the abandoned cabin, running her fingers over the faded photographs and rusted tools. She visited the clearing where the boy had stood, replaying the moment when their hands had nearly touched. Her dual existence became more pronounced with each passing day. She moved with the wolves, hunting and surviving as one of them. Yet her thoughts drifted to the humans, to the world beyond the trees that called to her like a faint melody. Luna knew she could not ignore the pull forever. The time would come when she would have to confront her identity, to reconcile the human and the wild within her. For now, however, the forest remained her home, and as long as it needed her, she would protect it with everything she had. The encroachment of humans into the forest grew bolder. Trees that had stood for centuries were felled in days, leaving behind barren clearings and jagged stumps. The once pristine streams ran murky with soil and chemicals, and the sound of machinery echoed through the wilderness, drowning out the natural symphony of the wild. For Luna and the wolves, survival became increasingly difficult as their territory shrank. The pack moved constantly, their den no longer a fixed haven, but a temporary refuge. Each day brought new dangers: poisoned bait left by hunters, traps concealed beneath the leaves, and the ever-present roar of human activity. Fenrir led the pack with unwavering determination, his silver coat now marked with scars from his efforts to protect them. Luna stayed close to him, her instincts sharpened by the wolves' growing unease. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the pack gathered in a secluded valley. The air was heavy with tension, the wolves' movements restless. Fenrir stood at the center, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. Luna felt the weight of his gaze and knew that something was coming. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, its once vibrant energy replaced by an eerie stillness. The humans' final push came without warning. A massive convoy of trucks and machinery entered the forest, their headlights piercing through the darkness. Workers moved quickly, setting up floodlights and marking the land for clearing. The wolves watched from the shadows, their growls low and threatening. Luna crouched beside Fenrir, her heart pounding as she tried to comprehend the scale of the invasion. The machines roared to life, their spinning blades tearing through the trees. The destruction was swift and unrelenting, reducing the forest to rubble in a matter of hours. The wolves circled the edges of the clearing, their instincts urging them to flee, but Luna felt a surge of anger that rooted her in place. This was her home, and she could not let it be destroyed without a fight. Fenrir stepped forward, his posture commanding. The pack followed his lead, their growls growing louder as they prepared to confront the intruders. Luna hesitated for a moment, her gaze shifting between the wolves and the humans. Then, with a deep breath, she joined the pack, her body moving instinctively as they launched their attack. The wolves struck with precision, their movements coordinated and deliberate. They targeted the humans' equipment, tearing through hoses and wires. Workers shouted in panic, their tools rendered useless as the wolves dismantled their machines piece by piece. Luna moved among them, using her agility to sabotage what she could. Her hands worked quickly, pulling cables and scattering tools into the underbrush. The humans retaliated with force. They brandished weapons, rifles and sharp tools, firing shots into the air to scare the wolves away. Luna narrowly avoided a falling tree, its massive trunk crashing to the ground with a deafening thud. She glanced around, her heart racing as she realized the scale of the chaos. Wolves darted in and out of the shadows, their howls echoing through the clearing. Amid the frenzy, Fenrir faced the greatest danger. A hunter, armed with a rifle, had cornered him near the edge of the clearing. Fenrir stood his ground, his growl deep and resonant. The hunter raised his weapon, his finger tightening on the trigger. Luna, seeing the danger, raced toward them, her body propelled by instinct. Just as the shot rang out, Fenrir lunged. His powerful jaws clamped down on the hunter's arm, knocking the rifle to the ground. The man cried out in pain, but his second shot found its mark. Fenrir staggered, his silver coat stained with crimson as he collapsed onto the ground. Luna reached him moments later, her hands trembling as she pressed against his wound. The remaining wolves rallied around Fenrir, their howls filled with grief and rage. Luna knelt beside him, her tears falling onto his fur. Despite his injuries, Fenrir's gaze remained steady. He nudged her hand with his nose, a gesture of reassurance, even in his final moments. Luna felt the weight of his unspoken words, his legacy now resting on her shoulders. The humans, overwhelmed by the wolves' relentless attack, began to retreat. Their machinery lay in ruins, and their workers fled into the night. The forest fell silent once more, save for the soft rustle of leaves and the faint cries of the pack. Luna stood, her body shaking with a mix of sorrow and determination. Fenrir's sacrifice had not been in vain, but the fight was far from over. In the days that followed, Luna took on a new role within the pack. Though she was not a wolf, the others looked to her for guidance. She led them in rebuilding their territory, using her knowledge of the forest to find new hiding places and safe paths. She also began to explore the edges of human settlements, searching for ways to protect the forest from further harm. Luna's dual identity became both her strength and her burden. She moved between the worlds of humans and wolves, bridging the gap between them. The pack trusted her instincts, and the forest seemed to embrace her efforts, its energy slowly returning. Yet Luna knew that the balance she sought would not come easily. As she stood on a ridge overlooking the forest, Luna felt the weight of Fenrir's legacy pressing against her heart. The forest stretched out before her, its scars visible but healing. She took a deep breath, her resolve unshaken. The wolves had sacrificed everything to protect their home, and she would ensure that their efforts were not forgotten. The forest had been scarred, but it was not broken. The destruction left by the humans lingered in the form of felled trees and trampled undergrowth, but the resilience of nature was evident. Plants sprouted through the ash, streams cleared themselves of debris, and animals cautiously returned to their disrupted homes. Luna stood at the center of this transformation, her resolve shaped by Fenrir's sacrifice and the lessons the forest had taught her. In the weeks following the final confrontation, Luna worked tirelessly to heal the forest. The wolves moved under her guidance, using their instincts and agility to assist in restoring balance. They carried seeds in their fur to help regrow plants and patrolled the damaged areas to ensure that no further harm came to their home. The pack had accepted her as their leader, a position Luna bore with both pride and solemnity. Yet Luna knew that the humans would return. The logging company had been forced to retreat, but their ambition remained. The scars they had left were a reminder of their power and persistence. Luna understood that survival required more than resistance. It required understanding. One crisp morning, Luna ventured to the edges of the forest. She moved silently through the trees, her senses tuned to the rhythms of the wild. From her vantage point, she could see a small settlement nestled against the horizon. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the distant hum of human activity reached her ears. It was a world she had only glimpsed from afar, but now she felt compelled to confront it. Luna began observing the settlement with the same care she used to study prey. She noted the humans' routines, their tools, and their patterns. Her curiosity about them deepened as she watched children playing in the fields, their laughter carrying through the air. They were so different from the loggers who had invaded the forest, yet they shared the same connection to the world beyond the trees. Her opportunity to act came when a group of villagers entered the forest to gather firewood. Luna followed them cautiously, her movements hidden by the dense underbrush. One of the villagers, a young woman, wandered away from the group, her attention drawn to a patch of wildflowers. She knelt to examine them, unaware of Luna's presence. Luna stepped into the clearing, her body tense but unthreatening. The woman froze, her eyes wide with surprise, as she took in the sight of the wild-haired girl standing before her. Luna raised her hands, mimicking a gesture of peace she had seen among the humans. The woman, though startled, seemed to understand. She lowered the flowers and stood slowly, her posture careful and non-threatening. Over time, Luna began to establish a fragile connection with the villagers. She appeared at the edges of the settlement, her presence fleeting but deliberate. She brought small gifts from the forest, bundles of herbs, fresh berries, and even tools left behind by the loggers. In return, the villagers left food and supplies at the forest's edge, a silent exchange of trust. This tentative truce grew stronger when the wolves began to interact with the humans. Under Luna's guidance, the pack learned to move near the settlement without fear or aggression. The villagers in turn began to see the wolves not as threats but as guardians of the forest. The relationship between the two worlds, though fragile, began to shift. The turning point came when a group of loggers returned to the forest. Their machines roared to life once more, cutting a path through the regrowth. Luna rallied the pack, and together they confronted the intruders. But this time, they were not alone. The villagers, led by the young woman Luna had first approached, stood alongside them. Armed with nothing but their voices and determination, the villagers demanded that the loggers leave. They spoke of the forest's importance, not only to the wolves but to their own lives. They argued for the land's protection, their words carrying the weight of truth. The loggers, faced with resistance from both humans and nature, had no choice but to retreat. The victory was not just for the forest, it was a victory for unity. For the first time, humans and wolves had worked together to protect their shared home. Luna felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. She had bridged the gap between two worlds, creating a harmony that had once seemed impossible. In the months that followed, the forest began to heal in earnest. New growth flourished where the ground had been bare, and animals returned in greater numbers. The villagers worked alongside the wolves to plant trees and restore the streams. Luna, though still a child of the wild, found herself connected to the humans in a way that felt natural. The pack, now led by Luna, thrived under her guidance. Koda, recovered from his injury, became her closest ally, his playful spirit a constant source of encouragement. The wolves moved freely through the forest, their howls no longer carrying the weight of fear, but the joy of belonging. Luna often stood at the ridge overlooking the forest, her gaze sweeping across the land she had fought to protect. She thought of Fenrir and the lessons he had imparted through his leadership and sacrifice. She thought of the cabin where she had first glimpsed her connection to humanity. And she thought of the villagers whose trust had given her hope for the future. The forest was no longer just a home, it was a symbol of resilience and unity, a testament to the power of understanding and coexistence. Luna knew that challenges would come, but she also knew that the bond between humans and nature could endure. Together they could protect the wild and ensure its survival for generations to come. Years passed and the forest continued to thrive. The scars left by the loggers faded, replaced by towering trees and vibrant growth. The streams ran clear, their waters teeming with life. The wolves, ever vigilant, roamed freely, their howls echoing through the wilderness. Luna, now grown, stood at the edge of the forest. Her wild hair framed a face marked by wisdom beyond her years. She had become a guardian of the land, a bridge between humans and nature. Her connection to the wolves remained unbroken, their bond strengthened by years of trust and shared purpose. The villagers often spoke of her as a legend, a girl raised by wolves who had fought to protect the forest from destruction. Children whispered stories of her courage, their imaginations weaving her tale into the fabric of their community. Yet to Luna, she was simply a part of the wild, a reflection of the forest's enduring spirit. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Luna turned her gaze to the forest. The trees swayed gently in the evening breeze, their leaves whispering promises of the future. She knew that her journey was far from over. The wild would always need its protectors, and she would always answer its call. With a final glance at the horizon, Luna stepped back into the shadows of the forest, her figure blending seamlessly with the land she called home. The wolves howled in the distance, their voices carrying her legacy across the wilderness, and the forest, timeless and eternal, stood as a testament to the harmony she had fought to create.